I want to take a few more comments by other scholars on Luke Acts and on Luke himself. We're going to look at a Zondervan exegetical commentary on the New Testament. This one's by Eckhard Schnabel. This talks about Luke being either a Gentile or a Jew or a convert to Judaism. And Schnabel points out that scholars in the past have thought that he was a Gentile, completely Gentile. Then others, more recently, have thought that he was well instructed in Jewish traditions, so that it was very likely that he either was from a Jewish background or else he became a God-fearer or possibly a proselyte, convert to Judaism. Schnabel says the substantial influence of the LXX, the Septuagint or the Greek Bible, the Greek Hebrew scriptures of those days, that's all there was, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. The substantial influence of the LXX on the language and style of Luke's Greek, the way in which Jesus is described in the book of Acts, the references to Israel as the people of God, the emphasis on the fulfillment of the promises given to Israel, and the depiction of Paul as a missionary to Jews have prompted scholars more recently to regard Luke as a Jewish Christian, a Messianic Jew. If he was indeed born as a Gentile, as many scholars assume, he may have been a convert to Judaism, in other words, a proselyte, or he may have belonged to the group of the so-called God-fearers, which are Gentiles who had close connections with local synagogues. I don't have a particular viewpoint more than anybody else, except that Luke's Greek is highly reflective of Jewish traditions in a lot of ways, even if he doesn't point out everything that Matthew does. So I would say it's pretty hard to prove that he doesn't have a strong connection to Judaism, which he does. And in that case, is he a God-fearer? Is he a convert? Is he a Messianic Jew or a Jewish Christian? How about a Christian Jew? Is he a Christian Jew? I think it's possible. So then we're going to look at a couple of other comments. Well, one other remark about that. The distinctive biblicizing form of standard educated Greek strongly suggests that Luke belonged to a social context that gave him a grounding in Jewish Greek literature available in the synagogues of the Jewish diaspora communities. So again, Schnabel thinks that at the very least, Luke was very familiar with diaspora Judaism. This is what Schnabel says about Luke Acts, Luke's 2 volumes. Acts is the second volume of a larger work that begins with the prologue, Luke 1, verses 1 through 4, in which Luke outlines his historical principles, which are also relevant for the second volume of Luke's project. So I just want to say again that scholars recognize that the author Luke wrote both Luke and Acts, and it was meant to be a single project consisting of 2 volumes, and that the implication is, as I mentioned with a different scholar, the implication is that you can't study one volume without the other. You can't study Luke without Acts, ultimately, and you can't study Acts without Luke, for sure. You can't start reading Acts and just start throwing on all kinds of ideas from all kinds of other authors instead of just staying with Luke, first of all. Later, after you clear things up in Luke's mind, then you can start comparing to other authors. So we're now going to look at a remark by Darrell Bock, who's written commentary on Luke Acts, and we're going to see that he also maintains that Luke Acts is a single literary work in 2 parts by the same author, Luke. Bock says that he took on this assignment at the time because no one recently had written a major commentary on both works, and because Luke Acts is the product of one author telling one story in 2 volumes. That Luke Acts was a single work had been little appreciated in the way commentaries handled both works. So we're going to go through what the commentators say, and we're going to review the scriptures themselves, and we're going to find out we cannot just start studying Acts on its own. We have to first of all start with Luke, and then we go to Acts.